Okay, I'm now recording to this computer. I will call the meeting of the Sixtown Regional Planning Board Finances Transportation Facilities Subcommittee to order at 4:56 p.m. We are meeting over Zoom because of the pandemic restrictions, and therefore we'll do all votes and attendance via roll call. I am recording the meeting. Is anyone else recording the meeting?
Nope.
Okay. I'll do a roll call attendance. Jane Dutcher.
Present.
Michelle Geruso.
Here.
Mike Naughton, present. 3 is a quorum. We also have Joanne Blyer here for maybe another couple of minutes. And Mark Abrahams is here from the Abrahams Group.
I think it's my turn to take the minutes. Mike, will you send me the recording after the meeting?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yes, I will. I'll put it on the YouTube site and send you the link.
Okay.
Okay. And well, I guess I mean, we're really got one out of the agenda. We're talking with Mark about where things are and where we're going. Mark and I were talking a little bit ahead of time. You want to start, Mark, with your updates on what's happened?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. I thought Mike did a super job on the flow chart.
Mm-hmm.
Last meeting, we were talking about getting on the same page, and this represents, to me at least, Mike and I are on the same page. So do you want to talk about the flow chart, or you want me to give you an update first?
Well, why don't you give us something? I'd like to kind of get to the flow chart after going through a couple of other things. And let's start with your update.
Okay. So the first thing I did was to contact NASDAQ to get them to update the 2018 study. If you recall, that study presented Pioneer Valley separate from Gil Montague and then a combined. And that was Sersha 2018. And they did it for a number of years looking back and a number of years going forward, which covered the 5-year projection. So I'm anticipating the same type of report, but updated, and I'm told they could have that by the end of May.
Right.
In addition,
Did you talk to them about comparing their projections with actuals?
no, I did not yet. Steve actually talked to them. I'm going to wait to talk to them until after this meeting. Okay. I wanted to get your input.
Okay.
Good point. Secondly, we send out data requests to Joanne and to Tanya. Same data requests that we sent out for the prior study: salary schedules, contracts, fringe benefit schedules, fiscal 22 budgets, assessments, and the like. I believe all data requests have been received. Tanya sent me some additional stuff today. Joanne just got back from vacation and sent her stuff today. I have not looked at it. All I've done is downloaded it. And I'm creating 2 files for them. One, Gil Montague data responses, and 2, Pioneer Valley data responses. And one of my questions to you is, do you want all of these source documents up on your drive?
I would say yes. But what do Jane and Michelle think?
I'm not a programmer.
Well, it's not a question of programming. What it does, for example, if you look at Mike's flow chart and you look at the bottom right and you see the salary and benefits workbook,
Mhm.
what Matt does is he takes Gil Montague's salary schedule, Pioneer Valley's salary schedule, and merges them into one. And then there's some decision points where they don't match, where he makes some decisions and comes up with one salary schedule. That then is going to feed the educational costs, staffing costs, once that comes in from Mars. Same thing with the fringe benefit schedule.
So are we talking about putting documents on the website then? On the
Well,
drive?
that's my question. Because these are going to feed the educational costs, and then the two budgets, the Pioneer Valley 22 budget, the Gil Montague 22 budget, is going to feed the budget workbooks that are on the bottom left of the diagram.
I think it would be helpful to have them there if we want to refer to them. Everything is public information anyway, because that website's available to anybody who wants to sign in and look at it.
Right. In
We
fact,
have
people
to
don't
be sure
even
that
need to
everything
sign in.
is-
So I got into the website. I tested that today, Mike. I did not need the email address. I did not need the password. But that was just to get on the site, not to put data on the site.
Right. Anybody who has the link can see what's there and download what's there.
Okay.
You need to sign on to put stuff there.
Okay. I haven't done that. So
So that's my question is, are we putting things in a very public place that we shouldn't be?
well, the budgets are clearly public information.
Okay, can we just pause a minute? Lynn, hello, are you there?
She just froze.
I am.
Okay, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I don't know what's going on. I had to download Chrome and reload Zoom and so I'm in Chrome, I think, rather than my regular Safari. I was on another Zoom call this morning, no problems, but all kinds of problems with this.
Okay, well, your screen is very choppy. But we can hear you so far.
Okay. I have no idea what's going on.
Okay, well, as long as you can hear us,
I can hear you fine.
and if it makes it easier
Yeah,
for you, if you want to,
it didn't like my audio. It said, yeah, and now you're frozen.
I think if you want, you can turn off your video. Because if you can still see us, there's really nothing to see at this point, but it might help your connection if you turn off your video.
Okay. Yeah, it took a while for it to realize I wanted it to turn it off.
Okay. Yeah, you got
That
sort of
better?
I think that's a little better. So we're just talking, Mark was just going over where he's at, and we're talking about putting basically documents that he's received up on that Google Drive that I set up. And
So-
Jane, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, what we might want to do is check with Tanya and check with Joanne as to what is truly public information and what is not.
Or just ask them to give permission to put everything up there.
Clearly, the budgets are, but I don't
Right.
know if the salary schedules are. I assume them to be, but
I do too.
but I rarely see a salary schedule. I always see a budget.
Right, and the contracts would be public information.
So Mike, do you want to see if we need a protocol from the districts to post information up to your website?
Well, my suggestion is, how about if you, because you've made the request to the districts.
Correct.
How about if you just contact them and say that unless they tell you otherwise, everything they've sent to you will be posted, and give them a certain amount of time to respond saying, no, don't post X, Y, or Z. And then if there's stuff that they don't want posted, we can figure out what to do, how to handle that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if it, if it's public information, then it can be posted. And I agree, the not that we all will go through everything, but I think we want to be in a position where we could go through everything.
Well, and my thinking is that if these are going to be the documents that ultimately feed the program that we're going to have, then we need to be able to put future documents up there to feed into the program. So it makes sense to have them there.
Right. Right. And one quick programming note, given that the documents may change over time, whatever the feed mechanism is, and I'm kind of thinking that maybe Excel macros would be a good way to do it, but I'm not a big Excel expert. But it'd be set up in such a way that it's relatively straightforward to change the name of the document that's being accessed.
Well, that,
And we could talk about that more when we actually see how it's being done, but just want to, I'll toss that out in the beginning, because we don't want to have a situation where we try to say, put in another document, run the feed to update the information on the final spreadsheet, and get a bunch of errors saying it doesn't know what we're talking about or it can't find something.
Right.
So that,
now, Mike, that's what happened.
well, not
my
if you
husband
set it up right first, it doesn't.
Well, it helps. I'm going to change the subject for a second. My husband just stuck his head in the room here and said guilty on all 3 counts.
Oh,
Wow.
right? Wow.
Surprise.
Oh, my
Okay.
goodness. Oh, my goodness. I didn't think that was going to happen.
I didn't either.
Wow.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah, convicted of
Well,
murder
they're
and
not going to be
manslaughter.
burning towns down tonight.
Whoa.
Oh, I hope people use some common sense here.
Yes.
I do too. Oh,
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll check with Tanya and I'll check with Joanne.
Okay. I mean, if I can be helpful, it occurs to me that I'm not sure, since you've been dealing with them directly and they've said stuff to you, to say, if you just say, anything you said to me, I'm going to put on that Google Drive unless you
Right.
tell me not to.
So this is different than last year, because last year only our exhibits, our appendices, and the report went on the website. The supportive documentation, the source documents did not.
Right.
So
Yes, it is different. It
Um,
is different.
the last item I have for you is I contacted DESE to have them provide what they provided last year, but an update on the Student Opportunities Act. the projections of Chapter 70 over the next 5-year period. Actually, theirs is 7 year. Well, I would say those are going to be 6 years now because MMA requested that the state got caught up in funding 2 years of SOA impacts because the state missed last year. So now I think it's going to be a 6-year horizon. Rob Hanna responded that he hopes to talk to me sometime this week about that. It took them a while to get that data to us last year, but we're still early in the process. What you're going to see from that is they're going to make certain assumptions on enrollments. Typically, they keep enrollment flat for their assumptions. Then you're going to see projections of foundation budgets, which is based on the enrollment times their foundation rates, with emphasis on the fringe benefit rates going up, and then the incremental costs on the enrollment for English language kids, low-income kids particularly. And as you recall, that significantly benefited Gil Montague last year, not so much on Pioneer last year. And I would expect the same for at least fiscal 22 and 23. And we'll see if that makes any difference on Pioneer. What we don't know is when NASDAQ comes up with their projections, let's say late May, and they are materially different than DESI's flatlining, will DESI then give us a second run based on NASDAQ's projections? I have no way of predicting whether they will or will not. In addition, you'll get the local contributions to the region. So it'll be the local regional district contributions projected for the same 5 or 6 year period. And that served as an input to the assessments, particularly the statutory assessments for the districts. And if, as I recall, they gave us separately Pioneer Valley SOA projections separate from Gil Montague as individual districts, and then they ran it combined. So that's what we did this week. That's been our responses. I will speak to NASDAQ tomorrow after this call. Matt will be back this weekend. His first task will be to take the salary schedules and combine them, take the fringe benefit schedules and combine them, and then take the fiscal 22 budgets, Pioneer and Gil Montague, and combine them into one district-wide budget. Just as an aside, the Pioneer Valley budget is based on state object codes presentation. The Gil Montague budget is based on DESI function codes. Joanne provides a crosswalk between the two. If I remember right, Tanya did not. And that's how we were able to maneuver the budgets to get them compatible.
Okay, Bart, could you say that again? Just the, what?
Pioneer presents its budget based on DESI function codes.
Okay.
1,000 school committee, 2,000
Mhm.
instruction, 3,000, student services, etc.
Okay,
Pioneer Valley presents it on state object codes primarily. Professional salaries, clerical salaries, other salaries, supplies, and contracted services.
sure. So that's Pioneer, and Gil Montague is the DESI function codes.
Correct. You'll
Okay.
see that when you see their budget documents.
Okay. Yeah, because one of the things I was interested in was if there was a useful way of translating one into the other.
I'm going by memory here, Mike. I think Joanne provided within the DESI function codes, the state object codes.
Okay.
Now-
Now, when the state does analysis of like how much districts spend in different areas, so they get their averages, and so they can tell districts out here that they're spending more than average. Do they use the DESI function codes or the state object codes?
So they use the end of the year report,
Right.
which consists of several schedules, but the primary schedules, Schedule 1 and 3, are by DESI function code first,
Okay.
and then state object code within function codes, each by program,
Okay.
sped, regular day. So
Okay.
coming off the end of the year reports, all of the DESI requirements are there. You typically won't see in a budget the state object codes within DESI function codes by program. You won't see that as a budget presentation. You'll see either DESI object codes or DESI function codes. And in many budgets, no, in some budgets, they'll present it both ways,
Okay.
or at least the salaries, they'll present it both ways.
Okay.
So what's different this year, if you look on the left bottom on the budget workbook, we're combining the two budgets into one. Last year, phase 2, we really presented this by program. Sorry, by subject. And we had program 1, program 2, program 2 being the more robust, program 1, the less robust.
Okay.
So that will be a question as we get into compiling the budget workbook in terms of how you want to see this presented. So I want you to think about that in terms of presenting this by function code, by state object code, or have the ability to present it both ways as we design this. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
The question makes sense to me. Of Jane, Michelle, Lynn, do you, anybody have an opinion off the bat?
I'm a visual, so I'd like to see it first.
You want to share? Give
I
me
know
a share.
Pioneer's budget. I know what it looks like. I've seen Gil Montague's once or twice, but I can't remember.
I think we probably need both codes in there. So if we need to sort it by one code, we can do that. But then tomorrow we need to sort it by the other code. We have that capability.
Mike, you want to give me host
Okay.
or allow me to show my screen?
Sure. Let's see. Tell you what, why don't you try to share your screen? I think it's going to tell me I need to give you permission.
You need to give me permission. Oh, no, no. Nope. You disabled participant screen sharing.
I did.
You did.
Oops.
I got the triangle with the exclamation mark.
Sorry about that.
Oh. Technology is wonderful, except when it isn't.
Okay.
You know how to do it, Mike? You go to my thingy, and there's 3 buttons there.
Oh, here we go. Well, now mine says one participant can share at a time.
Mine says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Well, here you go. I'll make you host.
Yep.
There we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes,
Yes.
very clear.
All right, so you'll notice on the left are the state object codes. Salary, salary, contracted, supplies, other salary, salary.
Mhm.
It's not quite, because the salaries, there are 3 components of it. Professional salaries, clerical salaries, other salaries. These are the function codes, 1,000. So here are the line items within the 1,000 function code,
Mhm.
and here are the quasi state object codes.
Hmm.
And then this goes on to the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000s, et cetera.
Right.
So I'm gonna stop sharing here and find Gilmont. All right, I stand corrected. No. Tanya presents it by department. So here's athletics.
Right.
Now in here are the function codes, the 3370, 3510. So they're similar to the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. All of these are 3,000 plus 4,000, which is plant operations. And one of these codes, let's see, over here, the 4113, the 4 would be contracted, no, the 4 would be contracted services, 1 professional salaries, 3 other salaries, 5 supplies. So we have that information.
Mhm.
Central office, the function code is the second over here. And the state object code is,
Should be in the same location.
yeah, it should be the same location, but this seems a little bigger.
Hmm.
No, it's the same code.
No, it's the same.
It's the
Yeah.
same code, yeah.
6 is travel.
So the information's there we'd have to go in and make these singular rather than a string in order to sort by the various elements within the account number. And secondly, Joanne would have to provide more detail to get to the true state object codes in order for us to fill in the bottom left in a manner that would be consistent between the two districts. And then Jane, you'd be able to sort that by each one of these segments or fields, whatever you call them.
Ah. Okay.
What occurred to me was that we might want to be able to sort it so that we just looked at the high school or just looked at elementary schools or just looked at administration, and all that's possible with this code.
Yeah, so the administration would be in the 1000 function series. The high school would be in the location. The middle school would be in the location, et cetera. So the elements are here. What I'm suggesting is you think through how you want to see the budget presented for the district, for the 6-town region. You don't have to decide that today,
Thank you.
but I got to give you homework assignments, get you to think about things so that we can move on.
Can you show the Gil Montague sheet again?
I can.
So all Joanne has is just the 1000s in there. She doesn't have anything beyond that.
So if you look to the left, she does.
Oh, okay.
Column A. Oh, wait a minute.
Do we have B through
She tricked me here. Hold on.
H?
No, I can't. You see there's some columns hidden here.
Yes.
I can't. It won't let me grab it.
Hmm.
What I'm hoping for is that she'll have all the similar codes that Tanya has. So on the left here is Tanya's. On the right here is Joanne's.
Right.
But I don't know why, I can't unhide these.
Then she may have locked the worksheet or something.
I don't know, I should be able to. It's Excel. Oh, no, it's PDF.
Yeah.
So if she gives you the Excel sheet, you'll be all
Yeah.
set.
Yeah, I just got this literally as Mike and I started to talk.
So it may not be as difficult as we think. Maybe the codes are all there.
Right.
So
Okay,
I think,
thank you.
yeah, I think it would be neat if you could have the ability to sort both budgets by any one of these DESI fields.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Because this morning I was thinking about this stuff, and one of the thoughts that popped into my head was, well, I wonder how many English teachers we have in the high school, and how many we would need in a combined. So that's the kind of thing that led me to this question.
So I think it's easier. This is Tanya's, and this is elementary salaries,
Hmm.
and then elementary supplies, insurance and benefits.
I'm not
That's
seeing anything
fine.
different, Mark.
It's
Oh.
not displaying, Mark.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's because I didn't stop sharing.
Oh.
I jumped right to it.
See, I think I have there.
Uh,
All right.
So what I started to show you, elementary salaries. So this is all of their elementary schools. But it doesn't tell you the FTEs. So here you have teacher salaries.
So that first line is is Bernardston teacher salaries. The second line is Northfield. The third line is PVRS. No, I don't know what the four. Four is Warwick. And the next line that says ends with 6.0, that's the middle school, high school.
Right.
You know,
It gives you the total. It doesn't give you how many. There's
Right.
got to be backup to get to how many.
And I think I have that back.
And there's a sheet for administration.
Yeah.
Professional development.
mhm.
PVRS. I don't know what RS is. I forget.
Regional school.
I know it's regional, but is it the high school? Is it district wide?
Well, when it says 5, let's see, what did I tell you before? 1 is Bernardston, 2 is Leiden, 3 is Northfield, 4 is Warwick, 5 was the high school, 6 is shared.
Hmm.
So the resource officer is shared because that's number 6.
Right.
All right, so this is
So 5 is the high school.
your sped teachers.
Um,
So anyway, by Pioneer presents it by department or by site,
Mhm.
and Gil Montague. There's only 2 tabs here, budget worksheet and revenue assessments. See if I can get into it. Yeah, I can get into it now. There you go.
Oh, wow.
So she has it individual columns, which makes it easier to get to.
Yeah,
So this is,
well, we can separate pioneers into individual columns pretty easily.
yeah. So this is really organized by column J, but you have the ability to sort this. I just wanted to make clear that the presentations are different.
Mhm.
And we have to be creative over here.
Yeah.
So
I
we
mean,
can.
Even if we match up their numbers, we still have the human element in there of how you interpret what you put in there. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I might call the telephone bill overhead for the whole district, and you might call it individual by school. That's a bad example, but you know
Oh,
what I mean.
I know what you're
I think
saying.
this is
So,
one with-
Hmm.
so
Utility.
what, Jane, what we usually find is that supplies in one district is a contracted service in another district,
Yeah,
legitimately. It is what it is. We'll have to work through that.
exactly.
Yeah, it seems like there will be a number of things we'll run into, and when we find them, we'll just have to figure out what to do with them. I do think it would be useful, even important, to be able to ask questions like, how many English teachers do we have at the high school? How many chemistry teachers, whatever? How many history teachers in the middle school? As a way of, as part of the question of, well, what happens if we decide to change programs? If we decide to, for example, if we decide to add world languages and we assume that means we're gonna need 3 more world languages teachers to have the budget structure be able to be changed in a way where somehow we can just plug in 3 more world language teachers at assumed average salary and benefits. Whatever we mean by that, we can talk about what we mean by that, and then see what that does to the budget.
Right.
What
You know,
strikes
or
me, what strikes me is that we're in a position where we could actually facilitate the education committee by showing them some commonality. As you say, Mike, how many teachers are at the high school, middle school, et cetera. We have that information. We have the raw data right now. But I think, what, in a couple of weeks, we might be able to have an output of the budget workbook that we could provide to the education guys and ladies. I think Steve would want to know that. Steve and Mars would want to know that.
Well, and then we need feedback from them to be able to adjust our combined budget based on what they're projecting for curriculum.
Change, right.
right, right. Although I see that as being maybe a little further down the road.
That part, but if we could provide them with basic, here's the number of teachers you have now. Here's the number of administrators you have now. Here's the number of paraprofessionals you have now, et cetera.
Right. I think that would be good.
Okay. So do you have any questions on my issue of 2 different budget presentations that has promised that we can present this in different ways?
I think as long as we're comfortable understanding, recognizing what was done, shouldn't be an issue.
I mean, part of this may depend on Matt's skill set and what he's comfortable doing. Because it seems like there's a number of ways to go.
Right.
I mean, what occurs to me is that one possible route would be to take each of these budgets and pull the data out into some sort of database that, with all the codes broken out into different fields. And then it wouldn't matter that, that the data had been arranged one way in one budget and another way in another budget, because the codes could be, you could write queries over the database to match up what you want to match up, to sort it the way you want to sort it, to group it the way you want to group it, and then pump it back out into an Excel spreadsheet. And I say that as a person who knows that the kind of thing can be done, but hasn't actually ever done it. And so I don't know how involved it is and whether that's a good solution or just a possible solution.
That could be a good discussion point for next time.
So, but I think, I mean, I'm personally, I'm not wedded to one format or the other. I'm more interested in making sure that we get that the information is there somewhere, that we understand where it came from and why it is what it is. I mean, when we combine budgets, for example, we're not going to have 2 superintendents in the budget, and there'll be other adjustments that get made somehow. And I think it'll be important to talk about just how that does happen. And then again, that I think might be part of a process where not only are we saying, well, because we're combined into one, we need fewer of this, but we also have the capability to remove some of the positions that aren't needed anymore, but we also have the capability of adding in positions that are needed. And, again, some way of sort of relatively easily and straightforwardly being able to say, we'll start with the combined budgets, we'll subtract a superintendent, we'll add a couple of English teachers for the high school, whatever it is that we decide to do, that all gets taken by some sort of a database tool that then can spit out a budget in some kind of format. And the format at the end, to me, is less important, just because I think that should be relatively easy to change if we decide, gee, we'd rather see it this way rather than that way. That just means changing how it's sorted and grouped when it happens. And Jane, feel free to jump in here because. Lynn, you have something?
Yes, so you're going to have some, how do you say, kind of personal decision-making kind of thing. For example, when you're talking about numbers of teachers in various classes and so forth, it's kind of like you need to have some idea of the number of students, what classes you're going to have, what your class sizes are going to be, and then you can do the merging with the numbers. But it sounds like there's some personal decision-making that is outside the computer before you, how do you say, get your final product. Does that make sense?
So is that coming out of, yeah, it makes sense. Is that coming out of the education committee that's going to look at the number of students, number of teachers, class size, and determine how many classes are needed in order to determine how many teachers are needed? And then that feeds.
Right, and then knowing your students, but then it's going to be hard on some of these, how do you say, elective, because you're going to need to have a minimal number of students in a particular class. You're not going to hold a particular class, which has been a problem for the separate schools, if you've only got 3 students, because you're not going to only have one teacher for only 3 students. So you got to make some of those kinds of decisions in terms of where your class limits are and things like that, right? And I don't know who would make those decisions.
Well, I'm with Mark. I think that a lot of that will come from the education subcommittee.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't think it's, let's put it this way, I don't think it's our job to be saying, well, you need a class size of at least X,
Right.
or it can't happen. I think we do want to get some feedback on that.
Right.
And I'm not so quick to say that a class.
Decisions. Okay.
I'm not so quick to say that a class of 3 isn't viable either for various reasons. But I mean, that's a conversation had down the road. I think you're absolutely right that some decisions will need to be made. And we may say, but it may be possible to say that the class size only figures into certain things. That if you figure that you've got a class that everyone's got to take,
Yes.
then having a maximum class size of, let's say, 15 will make a big difference in the number of teachers you need for that class versus the maximum class size of, say, 25.
Right, and that's easy. Once you make
and
that,
that's so
it's where you come into.
yeah, and I think
that's
that's where it's going to matter. I think if we say we want to add different AP classes or different other types of classes, it may not be as useful to say, but we've got to, because I mean, who knows? So you say you're going to have a class size of at least 12 for AP physics class, how are you gonna know whether you're gonna get that?
That's right. That's what I was trying to get at, and because that sounds where you get into ether a little bit.
Unless it's something everybody's gonna take, in which case, everybody's gonna take it. So that's the number of people we gotta deal with.
Yep. Okay.
But
I don't-
that's where your line items and knowing what your line items equal will be important for someone to be able to change the data later on. Mark, I was thinking Matt is going to have some communication with Joanne and Tanya on some of these things that aren't straightforward, right? Like contracted services, for example.
So Matt had great talks with both last time in order to
Good.
ferret out the data. Remember, last time was the first big attempt at putting all this together. The phase one, we didn't have budget inputs. We were putting staffing patterns together based on benchmarks to other regional school districts of similar sizes. So he's had that conversation with them. It's not clear how much of the budget structure has changed. It doesn't look like the structure has changed much, but there's probably subtleties and changes here that we have to meet with them. The good news, and Mike and I spoke about this earlier, is that Tanya seems to be on board initially, whereas last time she wasn't on board until the final 3 weeks, literally.
Okay.
So Michelle, I don't see that as a problem.
Okay. Good.
Jane, any thoughts?
No, I'm glad to hear that, that evaluation, that everybody's on board. I've been concerned about that.
Very good.
No. My mind is spinning in a
Well-
million directions, but no, I don't have any thoughts to share.
So, okay, well, it's now about 10 minutes of 6. I mean, we did get started late. I don't mind going a little bit longer, but I wonder if, it sounds like we have something of a direction now. I mean, Mark, you're saying that you want to know what the format of the combined budget, which format we would prefer.
I don't think you have to make that decision. I think
Okay,
it's clear that we have the data points to populate the tool that will give you the ability to sort in Excel.
okay,
Your point earlier, Mike, about can we take the 2 budgets, sort by the DESI codes, or not even sort by the DESI codes, just load them into a database, write scripts to export the data out, and put that back into an Excel budget workbook. I have to talk to Matt about.
okay. That's just, I mean, I'm thinking that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, the other way of doing it,
And I'm not saying it's the best way of doing it. So
Yeah.
I defer to Matt, and, he's the one who's going to do it. So we should play to his strength,
right.
not make him do something when he thinks.
Well, I'd be interested in what he would recommend. He might have some ideas
Right.
we haven't even thought of.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's the timetable. He's back this weekend. I'll talk to him this weekend. And do you want to meet next Tuesday and get his thoughts, or do you want to, what's your pleasure?
I'll be out of town next week, so you You can, meet, but I won't be available.
Jane, what about
I'm
you?
available next Tuesday, but I have another meeting at 6:30.
Okay,
I'm available.
okay. I'm available and I'm thinking that, yes, we should meet next Tuesday because it sounds like talking with Matt as soon as possible about some of this stuff is going to help keep this moving on. If we wait another week, I think we'll have lost some time.
Okay,
So I think we should plan on meeting next Tuesday. Hopefully David can join us. Alan will probably be back. They can watch this meeting to get up to speed. And I guess the question is budget format, if we want to make a decision on that. And also to hear Matt's thoughts about how the process will work to take data out of the existing budgets and populate a combined budget and be able to basically what Jane wants, which is to be able to sort and also segment, I guess is a good word, right?
Well, I think when we hear
If we wanna
back from
see-
education, we'll probably want to do some segmenting.
Right. So we want to hear, generally speaking, how that will happen.
here's an issue that we haven't mentioned yet. The budgets are all populated with the DESI codes. When the education committee comes up with its programs, German, math, those are subject areas that do not have a corresponding DESI code.
Mhm.
It would be under instruction. So how are we going to get German into here and give you the flexibility to change the number of German teachers from 3 to 4 2 years from now? Do we have to come up with a code for subjects that currently does not exist? A. B, and I'm thinking aloud here. You've got an education committee that doesn't really know these codes.
Mhm.
So we're going to have the codes. So I guess we got to go through both budgets to look at subject areas to see if they're in there. If they're not in there, then how are we going to bridge that down the road? Because the education committee is going to think subjects, and we have numbers that don't get down to that. We have codes that don't get down to that level.
Well, part of me thinks maybe there should be elementary versus junior, senior high school.
Well, there are in terms of the locations.
The
No,
location,
no,
correct.
time out. There used to be grade levels, pre-K, kindergarten, elementary, junior, high school, after school. But when Schedule 3 was introduced back in 2002 or 2003, DESI stopped requiring grade level coding. So it's the locations that correspond to junior, elementary, and high school.
Right.
Kindergarten and pre-kindergarten may or may not correspond by location. You might remember that. I don't remember that.
Is that going to be an issue for us though? Because we're not assuming any changes at the elementary level, right?
Well, we're not
So
assuming
whatever-
any changes, but Bill Montague has middle school starting with 6th grade.
Right.
And this year, PVRS does not. Next year, that might change.
Correct.
Okay,
Jane, can you say that again? I missed it.
Gil Montague has, their middle school starts with the sixth grade, grade 6. But PVRS does not. It starts with grade 7. However, next year, 23, PVRS might start with 6. And I say might because they discussed it. They discussed it a long time, I'll be polite. And then finally decided not to move the 6th grade up.
So do we want to introduce grade, not grade level, but grade into here? Maybe not at the elementary grades, but starting with grade 6. And maybe that's a question for the education committee.
I think so, yeah. The other thing, I could see them, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I could see them saying, well, you can't compare the elementary schools either because one district offers world language in elementary or brings in outside people to educate in certain areas. And we're not comparing apples to apples. So,
You know, 1.5 million years ago, when my children were in elementary school, the district where we lived had a philosophy that the superintendent had a philosophy and said to the school principal, you're in charge of that building. And here's where I expect you to be at the end of the year and where I expect your children to be when they're going to leave that school. How you get there is up to you. And it occurs to me that the more elementary schools you have, the more important it is that that be your philosophy, instead of trying to have everybody in lockstep.
you're right.
Yes.
That's true.
So maybe we need to suggest that to the education committee. Although I think they're concentrating on junior and senior high school. I don't think they're looking much at elementary. And I thought we kind of agreed that that was maybe further down the road, that we had to concentrate on junior, senior high school at this point in our lives. Am I making things up?
No, I think that's true, that the assumption is that the elementary schools, except for the issue of what happens with 6th grade, are not going to change. And so that location, if we know location, that might be enough, because if the location is not the middle school, high school in either district, then whatever the budget requirement is, isn't going to change. And isn't really going to be the subject of this committee,
May I?
or the full board.
So in your programming backgrounds, are you familiar with the systems development lifecycle approach? Or
Well, I've heard of
at
it.
least a requirements definition?
It rings a bell, but I can't tell you how many years it's that I've been retired.
Okay, so let me simplify it. I would think if Matt was here, he's going to say, I need to know if you need a code in here for grade. Maybe it starts at 6 and it goes through 12. But just thinking ahead of how he may be responding to this discussion. Again, you don't need to decide today. I don't think you need to decide in a week. But I think, no, I think if we are to meet next week and we are to get Matt's input, I think we got to make a decision as to what fields are we going to ask Matt to include. And if there's any additional fields not included so far, what might those be?
Hang on a sec.
Mark, I don't know what the spreadsheet looks like that Tanya sent you, but the one I have from last year does have a table that lists the detail. So it lists people, specifically people's names and what school they're in. It's not giving me what grade level they were, but it is giving me the step that they're on. I'm not seeing that in this year's budget, so she may have hidden those columns or those pages.
Oh, hold on. Let's see here. I switched over. I would think she has that somewhere. Maybe, maybe not here.
Yes, what I'm seeing is another screen, like elementary salaries, then it says elementary detail. So there is another sheet someplace.
But it's not here.
It's
Well,
not,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I was going to say that part of the answer to what data points we'd like to include is we need to, they have to be available. Okay. So my take is yes, grade would be good, but based on what we've seen so far, grade is not available because there's no indication on this spreadsheet, the spreadsheets we've seen of what grade applies. On the other hand, everything is lumped together. These are basically the summary budgets that lump everything together. And based on what we did see last June, I know that there's some level of detail behind these to build those numbers. And the question is, what data points are available in that detail? And maybe that's something to find out for a meeting next week would be, given that we would like to know, if possible, that we would like, let's say that we would like the high school salaries, instructional salaries line item, okay, which is what we see today. If possible, we would like to know how many German teachers are included in that. And we would also like to know how many 10th grade teachers are included in that.
That gets even more complicated because teachers sometimes have more than one area that they teach in.
Yes.
So when we say we
Yes,
want to
well,
know how many German teachers there are, it might be that some of those German teachers also teach English or American history or world history or whatever you want to name.
Right. Or band.
Or band, right?
So I've heard of
Well, I guess, that's like the question is, does that get broken out where they're one person, but they're considered to be 0.6 English teacher and 0.4 something
somebody
else,
must know it,
a German teacher.
Right.
Well,
or
well,
they
that's-
wouldn't be able to develop a schedule for the students.
or a budget.
well, that's what I'm
Or a
thinking. And
budget.
the question is that written down in a way that we can,
Yeah.
that it can
Yes.
be accessed?
So let's do this.
At the bottom right of Tanya's spreadsheet here, she's got 0.5 FTE adjustment counselor, and we've been talking about a full FTE or half a, yeah, they know. I think. Or they
So
So I
would
think
it be,
that's my question for next week is what, how much more detail is available? Because I'm thinking that we don't want to just pull in, well, we've got instructional salaries at however many millions for the middle school, high school. We want to have a bunch of different, I want to say records that will make up that figure, that will be combined to produce that figure. And that's where that sort of detail will live. And the question is, what's available? I- I'm sort of on the fence about the sixth grade question, because if we decide that if Gill has a sixth grade in their elementary school, as they call it, then we don't really care. Whereas if the Great Falls Middle School also has a sixth grade, well, that's considered part of the middle school. I mean, they're separate buildings. And I think if that's really an issue, I don't see that as being a major thing for us to worry about, or to try to make sure that our tool will handle at this stage. It's more important that we know how many English teachers do we have, how many science teachers do we have, how many math teachers do we have, how many language teachers do we have? Can we tell if it's, if they're language teachers, are they French, German, Chinese, whatever, okay? So that when the education subcommittee starts talking about programs and say, well, we want to add this, and that's going to require this many teachers, maybe we can have some sense of, okay, well, that's going to mean we're going to have a total of whatever. That's a place I'd like to get to. Whether we can get to it, I don't know, but that's sort of my vision of where it would be good to get. And
Mike, I was just going to suggest, maybe we should start with 7th through 12th and look at the FTEs and the different, like you just suggested, how many French teachers, how many German teachers, start there.
Well, assuming it's true that the sixth grade is separate. I mean, if sixth grade is at Great Falls, do their teachers only teach them, or is there a teacher who teaches sixth grade science and seventh grade science?
Right, because 7th and 8th grade, they have a lot of different courses too. So there might be a teacher who teaches in the high school and the middle school. And that's,
I think there are.
Yeah,
I think there are.
I know, yeah. So that's the detail we need.
Right. Well, why don't we say that, so Mark, you're going to look into this to see what more detail is available?
So what I was going to suggest, I'm looking through the other files that they sent me today. What I was going to suggest is having Tanya and Joanne attend the next meeting. And you will have a week to think about this. And we can ask them what information is readily available. And if I don't have that information so far, they can send it, and then Matt can start with the budget workbooks.
Yeah.
The combination of the salary schedules isn't going to give you what you're looking for.
Right.
Right.
Right, and I think what we need is to have the detail to be able to respond to the education committee. We don't need to decide how many French teachers and how many German teachers and how many English teachers at each level. That's not our responsibility. But we need to have things laid out so that when education says we're going to have 2 French cycles, we're going to get rid of German, and we're going to add 1 Russian and 1 Chinese cycle, we need to be able to say Susie Q can teach Russian and Johnny can teach French, or whatever I just said. And so you just have to have teacher reassignments, and you have to rehire here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need to figure out how many to have. I think we need to be able to tell them what we do have and what they need in response, or what they need to eliminate in response to their plans.
That's
Well
exactly
put.
the way I was
Well
thinking.
put.
Yeah.
I have another question for Mark.
I'm going to
Is
show you
there a better
something.
way to do the budgets than the way these 2 districts are doing them? And should we be looking at a better way for a combined district?
So I'm gonna ask to pause that question for a minute. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
So this is I'm just going to scroll up here, look at column B. So we got a grade 3 teacher, phys ed, psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's grade 8 science teacher.
Yeah. And then you have an H full-time and an I, the FTE. Perfect.
We got art teachers,
Yeah.
math, science,
Perfect.
I'm trying to see these language teachers. Because it could just say language, but not subject.
And I'd say if we don't know that,
I
then
see
that's just something
Spanish.
to work on with the education.
You just
committee.
went
I mean, if we-
past Spanish, French.
Yeah, there's French, Latin.
And below is Spanish, French.
Where do you see that?
Just went off the screen.
Yeah, go lower.
Yeah.
Spanish, French.
Two of
And
them.
you look over to the right, you got part-time, full-time, and the FTE. That's perfect.
And
Yeah,
the,
that's
and
just
the
what we're looking for.
school is even there, the building that they're in.
School, Great Falls, Turtle Falls.
And this is perfect.
That is perfect, yeah.
Never say never, never say all.
And, you know, PBRS has to have something similar to that.
Right. Or they should,
Well, I hope it's not on paper and pencil,
yeah.
but, but I can't see developing a curriculum to offer to the students at the high school without something like this to
Right.
develop it with.
That's how I had to do my budget in the hospital by FTE. And names and what they did.
So I like this.
Yeah, I like that.
So
Even has the account number there.
Yeah,
except remember, the account number doesn't have subject.
Yeah, but the
No,
position
but
description
to
does.
tie everything together, the account number is there also.
Right. And what I'm asking you to think about is, do we want to add another segment to this for the subject or the position description?
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason not to, right?
With this information, we can code that.
oh,
Right. Yeah, so it's there. And we also want to add the FTE
mm-hmm.
column.
So which is this Gil Montague or is this?
This is Gil Montague.
This is Gil Montague.
Now, if you look down at line 130, that says 8- science teacher. So does that mean grade 8 and a science teacher?
Well, it's a
Or
middle
does it just
school.
mean 8th grade science teacher?
It's a middle school.
We can find out. I mean, some of the, we may have to do some research into what these position descriptions are.
Yeah,
Right, they look pretty.
But I think if we
consistent.
just pull them in as they are,
Yeah,
that's a start.
Yeah.
And use them with the account codes and the locations.
yeah.
if it has salary in there.
It does.
It
Column
does
J.
somewhere, yeah.
But it's fiscal 21.
Well, that's okay. We're just talking about data now. I mean, we don't get, this is the dummy data that we're using to build this tool, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
It's 21, and the PVRS budget that I was looking at that I said had teachers' names in, that was the 21 budget also. And you may have that.
Yeah.
This has got everything.
Because theoretically, if we take this spreadsheet and pull all that stuff in
Yeah,
and then group it by code, we should end up with the same numbers as we found on on that summary page, right?
mm-hmm,
I mean, that would be, and that's what we want to see, I think, is that summary number comes from all these little bits
Well,
and
that,
that we then have.
Mike, don't you think that summary page references this? Don't you think?
Well, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. But I'm thinking that in what we end up with, we may not even need that summary page to do that in the same way.
All right, so this is the fiscal 22 Unit A staff. It doesn't link to anything, but I would think that column P, total salaries, whatever that total is, should match the budget.
right.
Right.
Well, but I'm saying if you look at the budget and you look at the what fills that block, it may reference this table, this sheet, that line, or however many lines it needs to.
Right. Well, I think it would have to in some way,
Well, it would, yeah.
but
Anyway, that's not our problem.
Mike, I have to leave at 6:30. I just wanted to tell you that.
okay. Well, we should, I think, so Mark, do you think we need to have Tanya and Joanne come next week then? Because I think we've already found that we have what we want, at least from Joanne, right?
Well,
Or you have what we want.
we have it for in the past.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah, but
tell you what,
we know it exists. I mean,
I think,
I think
right.
my sense was
does anybody recall if Tanya has something similar?
I have never seen Nathan in such detail as this.
Oh, give me one sec. I know time is.
Well, Mark, why don't we just say that you could look into that for next week?
Well, I'm going to send Tanya Joanne's schedule and say, do you have something similar?
Yeah,
Okay.
One
in
thing,
which case I don't think we need,
I'm sorry.
I mean, I can tell them we're going to be talking about this, but I mean, they're both busy people. I don't want to say, we want you to come unless, and it sounds like if we can get this information, that's what we're looking for. Is that true? I mean, Jane, Michelle?
I
Lynn?
thought we wanted to meet next week so that we could meet with,
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Matt, yes,
Matt,
yes,
thank
we
you.
do.
So if I
Yes.
recall,
I'm not saying we're not going to meet.
and they're certainly welcome to attend. But I don't know, I don't think that we want them to attend so we can ask them these questions. I think they're better posed in an email. Do you have
That's-
them?
all right, so this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to send this spreadsheet to Tanya and see if she has something similar that has all these data elements. But I'll
Okay.
point out here, and things are coming back to me from last time. If you look at Joanne's coding, she doesn't have a separate field for programs, sped versus regular day. It's built into her other codes here. So we might want to add to her code another field for sped versus regular day. So we have the ability of merging the two.
Well, it's right there in column D, right?
But column D is, yeah, it's here, but it's not in the code.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that doesn't.
and the
yeah,
other
that doesn't
interesting
matter.
thing is that this code is separated by periods, not by separate columns, as that other table that you had up was separate.
Right.
columns.
And I haven't compared the coding, but the sequence, we'd have to get the same sequence on both districts
Right.
to do some combined sorting.
And that's where my thought that pulling all this into a database, you take that account column and break it up into 5 different fields. And then, you know, you've got everything that you need separated out. But that's something, I mean, that's what we'll be talking with Matt about next week,
Yeah.
I think. So,
He's good in Excel. I can't say how good he is with databases.
okay, well, we'll find out.
Yeah. All right, so,
And I know you can, I mean, you can do this in Excel too. It's just that, but let's wait. I don't want to get too far ahead of
Yeah.
us here.
all right, so next.
So,
next
and
step.
Michelle does have to go.
Next steps, I'm gonna contact Tanya with this file. I'm gonna contact NASDAQ, ask them the question, have they compared their projections to actual? I should hear from DESI on SOA this week, but I may not. I'm not in control of that. I will brief Matt. And I think that's my checklist.
Okay, well, that sounds like enough. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark. I think we've made some progress today. We will plan to meet next week. If 4:30 is not a good time for people, let me know, but.
If
um,
Michelle's not
that's-
going to be here next week, we could meet earlier.
All right, you could.
I'm just throwing that out as a,
Okay, should we consider 4 o'clock?
Sure.
Because you've got a 6:30, right, Jim?
right.
Okay,
If that's good for Mark and Matt,
Let me check. I can't speak for Matt.
okay.
oh, go ahead.
Well, Mark, if you can let me know, would you be able to let me know if there's a problem with that before Friday afternoon?
So, I'm gonna say let's stick to 4:30 because I'm involved in a litigation case and we've got that date set up for a possible full day. It's gonna start at 10. I can't speak that it should be over by 4:30. But if it's not, it's gotta be over by 5. So with that caveat, I'm reluctant to say 4.
Okay,
Let's keep it at 4:30.
Sure.
And if you're available earlier, I'll let you know when that Tuesday meeting breaks up.
okay, well, we got to post it, so,
Oh, that's
and
true.
I have to
That's
post
true.
it by Friday afternoon, so,
That's true.
okay.
4:30.
I'll just
The
tell the
only other-
lawyers that we gotta be off by 4:30.
The only other thing I want to talk about today is just quickly, because Jane is here. We have been talking about outreach to the various towns. And the question mark was Northfield. And of course, David is not here.
They have their town meeting on May 3rd.
Okay, but the idea being, you know, to be in conversation with town officials about what they're looking for, what questions they have.
Yeah.
I don't mind being the contact for Northfield.
You don't, okay?
It's
Well, I
just a
appreciate
matter of
that.
saying to them, you know, here we are, this is what we're doing. Do you have suggestions, concerns that you would like to bring to our attention? Basically, that's what you want, right?
That's what I'm looking for.
And they may
Mark,
not have, but the point is that we opened the door.
yes, that's all that's needed.
Go.
Because Mark, you want to send the host back to me?
Yeah.
Just don't want to forget that.
So, and my question, since I wasn't in on the discussion last time, those contacts can happen at any time
Yes,
and as often or as infrequently as possible
Right.
or needed.
right. Alan's just concerned that we not have a situation where town officials come to us later on in the process saying, hey, how come we never knew anything about this? We want to let them know and also give them the opportunity to provide any feedback. I've been talking with people in Montague and there hasn't been a lot of feedback. But there may be in the future. And David, has Wendell covered and Michelle has Leiden covered, and we're assuming you've got Berniston covered. And I've talked to Greg about, Gil. I mean, I think Greg has Gil pretty well covered. So Northfield was just a question mark.
Well, I'll contact the town administrator and tell her that
Yeah,
I've been appointed to do this, and what does she recommend?
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to adjourn if you're ready.
I think we're ready unless somebody has anything else.
I'll second the motion.
Doesn't sound like it. Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote. Jane Dutcher,
Yes, thanks, Mark.
Lynn Reynolds,
Yes, thank you, Mark.
I,
Michelle Druso,
Yes.
Mike Naughton, aye. And yes, Mark, thank you very much. I think this went well and see you next week.
Okay.
Have a great week.